Briefly D by Seti Kavali. So in the previous sessions I discussed about introduction to flexible AC transmission systems and need for transmission line interconnections and need for fax devices and power flow in AC systems, and next is power flow in parallel paths and power flow in meshed systems. So now in this class I am going to discuss different topic, that is limitations of transmission capability. Okay, limitations of transmission capability. Here we have different capabilities, different limitations to the transfer of the power. Those are basically, there are three kinds of limitations. First one is thermal, second one is dielectric, third one is stability. Okay, these three are the basic three kinds of limitations which limits the loading capability. Okay, so first one is thermal. So what is thermal? So how it is limiting the loading capability of a line or a particular line. Okay, so here I told you these things. There are three kinds of limitations for the loading capability. Those are thermal, dielectric, and stability. And next one is, first one is thermal. So actually, thermal means the thermal capability of an overhead line. So the thermal capability of an overhead line is a function of the ambient temperature. That means different temperatures. Okay, and wind conditions, condition of the conductor, and ground clearance. These are the different conditions in the overhead line functioning. Okay, depending upon these conditions, the overhead line is functioning. So here in this one, the thermal capability of overhead line is a function of the ambient temperature, wind conditions, condition of the conductor, and ground clearance. So during planning, so whenever we plan to load or transmit the power, so during the planning, losses can be taken into account in real time. So losses can be taken into account in real time value basis of extra loading capability. So if you want to transfer or if you want to load the given energy to a particular line, so we have to check the real time value basis of extra loading capability. So if you want to give the loading capability of one overhead line is 3000 megawatts. So first suppose I have to give extra loading capability, that is extra loading, that means I have to give the 4000 megawatts capability. So before that we have to check the real-time value basis of extra loading capability of that particular line. Okay, and next one is increasing the rating of transmission circuit. So we are already know that every circuit consists of particular rating. So here I have to increase the rating of transmission circuit. That involves consideration of the real time. Okay, that involves consideration of the real time ratings of the transformer. Okay, real time ratings of the transformer like 2 kVA, 3 kVA, 4 kVA. So like that we are giving ratings to the transformers. So if you want to increase the rating of transmission circuit, so it involves consideration of the real time ratings of the transformer and other equipment. So whatever we have in that line, so we have to check the rating of the or increase the rating of that particular equipment. So which may also have to be changed, in order to increase the loading on the line. So if you want to increase the loading on particular line, so we have to change that particular rating of that line, that equipment. Okay, so here we have one more important point is that we have to upgrade the structural upgrading is required to enhance the current capability of the system. So we have to check the current capability of the system. So for that one we require structural upgrading. Okay, if you want to check the current capability of the system, we have to upgrade the structural upgrading of the system. Okay, next. So actually in this one, why this fax technology is how this fax technology is helpful, these things means, so fax technology can help in making an effective use of upgraded system. Okay, so previously we can't use effectively existing upgraded system, but by using this fax technology, it can help in making an effective use of the upgraded system. Okay, So next one is, this is for thermal capability. Okay, this one is thermal, and second one is dielectric. So why we are going to dielectric means, so why it limits how it limits the loading capability of the line means, so there is a need to keep the dynamic and transient over voltages within limit. So we have to keep the dynamic and transient over voltages. So we have different types of over voltages in the system. So in those we have dynamic and transient over voltages. So we have to keep the dynamic and transient over voltages within limit. So this is the very useful need. Okay, there is a need to keep the dynamic and transient over voltages within the limit, and we are using in a substation or in any power station we are using some arresters. So here we have some modern gapless arresters or line insulators with internal gapless arresters, okay, are powerful thyristor control over voltage suppressors at the substations. So these types of equipments can enhance the line and substation voltage capability. So what we discussed in this one is gapless arresters, modern gapless arresters are line insulators with integral gapless arresters. Line insulators with internal gapless arresters are powerful thyristor control over voltage suppressors, so at the substations. So these are at the substations. So it can enhance the line and substation voltage capability. So it can enhance the line and substation voltage capability. So this is for dielectric. And coming to stability. So here we have, there are number of stability issues that limits the transmission capability. So already we've seen these transient stability, dynamic stability, steady state stability in power system analysis subject in the 5th chapter, stability analysis. Okay, we are already discussed about these things: transient stability, dynamic stability, and steady state stability. Okay, so already you know these topics. So these are the different transmission capabilities that limits the transmission capability of a particular line. Okay, those are transient stability, dynamic stability, steady state stability, frequency collapse, voltage collapse, subsynchronous resonance. Subsynchronous resonance. So this topic I discussed in the previous class, that is power flow in meshed systems. So in that one we have subsynchronous resonance. So by using thyristor controlled capacitor, so we can reduce this subsynchronous resonance at a particular level. So already I discussed this one. Okay, so actually these things will be overcome by using the FACS technology. So this FACS technology can be used to overcome any of the stability limit. So here we discussed these stability limits, that is transient stability, dynamic stability, steady state stability, and frequency collapse, voltage collapse, and subsynchronous resonance. So these stability limits will be overcome by using the FACS technology. By using FACS technology, we will overcome these capability, these limitations, stability limitations of the loading capability. So this is the topic. So actually this question will be, this concept will be asked for 2 marks or 5 marks from this chapter. Okay, concentrate on this topic and in the previous topic also. Okay, that is the power flow in AC system. In that also we have 2 subtopics, that is power flow in parallel paths and power flow in machine systems. That concept is also very important in this chapter. Okay, so this is one topic, and next one is power flow and dynamic stability considerations of a transmission interconnections. This is another topic in the first chapter, that is concepts of flexible AC transmission systems. So the topic is power flow and dynamic stability considerations of a transmission interconnections. Okay, so why we use transmission interconnections? So to reduce the uh, energy, to reduce the energy to a particular level, and to use the particular economical, okay, economical purpose, we use this transmission interconnections. So we need this transmission interconnection because apart from delivery, the purpose of the transmission network is to pool power plants and load centers in order to minimize the total generation capability. So in order to minimize the total power generation capability and fuel cost, and also these transmission interconnections enable diversity of loads availability of sources, and fuel price in order to supply electricity to the loads at minimum cost. So this is the main concept why we are using transmission interconnection. So to give the transmission, to give the electricity generation to a minimum cost with the required reliability, and also to pool the power stations and load centers in order to minimize the total power generation capability and fuel cost. So for that purpose we are using transmission interconnections in the power system. Okay, so I already discussed in the first class of this chapter. Okay, so here now I am going to discuss power flow and dynamic stability considerations of a transmission interconnection. So here we are having two diagrams. So in that one, first one is A. This one is for simple two machine system. This is simple two machine system. So first one and second one. Here we are using two systems. Okay, two generating stations. Here we are having 1 and 2. Okay, and another one is phasor diagram. This is for current flow perpendicular to the driving voltage. Current flow perpendicular to the driving voltage. Okay, this is the simple two machine system and current flow perpendicular to the driving voltage. So I will give this explanation in this one. So here I am taking the voltages E1 and E2. So E1 and E2. So those are E1 and E2 are the magnitudes of the bus voltages. So E1 and E2 are the magnitudes of the bus voltages with an angle delta between the two. With an angle delta between the two. So this one delta 1, delta 2. E1 and E2 are the magnitudes of the bus voltages. Okay, E1 and E2 are the magnitudes of the bus voltages with an angle delta between the two. Here the line is assumed to have inductive impedance X. Here, so the line is assumed to have inductive impedance X. So this one. Here we are assuming this one. So here the line is assumed to have inductive impedance X and the line resistance and capacitance are ignored. So here the line inductance is X, but the line resistance and capacitance are ignored in this one. Okay. So coming to this here. So in this diagram, this is the phasor diagram. So as shown in the phasor diagram, the driving voltage drop in the line is the phasor difference between EL. So this is E1 and E2. So these are the voltage drops in the line. Is the phasor difference EL between the two line voltage phasors. So EL is the phasor difference between the two line voltages. So EL is the phasor difference between the two line voltage phasors, that is E1 and E2. So these are E1 and E2. This is the phasor difference between E1 and E2, two line voltages. Here the line current magnitude is given by, here we have one formula, that is IL is equal to I is equal to EL by X. So here I already told that EL is equal to, that is the phasor difference between the two line voltage phasors E1 and E2. Okay, EL is the phasor difference between two line voltage phasors E1 and E2. Here the line current magnitude is given by I is equal to EL by X. Okay, here the current EL lags by 90 degrees. So in this diagram you see, so EL lags by 90 degrees. So here the current flow on the line can be controlled by controlling EL or X or delta. Here the current flow of on the line. So in this line, here we have to control the current flow by controlling EL, E1 and E2 and delta. Okay. So EL or X and delta. So this one. EL means phasor difference between E1 and E2, line voltage E1 and E2. X is the inductive reactance. Okay. And delta is the angle between these E1 and E2. So by controlling these things, we have to control the current flow on the line. Okay, in this line. So here, this diagram. So this shows that the current flow phasor is perpendicular to the driving voltage, that is 90 degrees phase lag. No, 90 degrees phase lag. Okay. So here if the angle between two bus voltages is small, so if the angle between two bus voltages, that is E1 and E2, Here the bus voltage is E1 and E2. If the angle between two bus voltages is small, then the current flow largely represents the active power. So whenever the angle between the two bus voltages is small, at that time the current flow largely, so that represents the active power. Okay. Next, while increasing or decreasing the inductive impedance of a line, that is X. So if we increase or decrease the inductive impedance of a line, so it will greatly affect the active power flow. Okay. So if the inductive impedance X of a line is increasing or decreasing, so it will greatly affect the active power flow. Okay. So by using the impedance control, which in reality provides current control. So if you want to control, so already I told this point. So here the current flow on the line can be controlled by controlling EL or X or delta. So here thus the impedance control, that is X. So which in reality provides current control. Same point. Okay. So here it can be the most cost effective means of controlling the power flow. So but this is the most cost effective for controlling the power flow in the line. Okay. Next, here I am taking two diagrams. So here the figure C is giving the active and reactive power flow phasor diagram. So this is the phasor diagram for active and reactive power. Okay. This is the phasor diagram for active and reactive power. So if you observe this diagram, it gives the relationship between active and reactive currents. Okay, it gives the relationship between active and reactive currents, that is IP1, IP2, IQ1 and IQ2. So these are the active and reactive currents. So this phasor diagram gives the relationship between the active and reactive currents with reference to the voltages at the two ends. With reference to the voltages at the two ends, that is E1 and E2. Okay. So this phasor diagram will give the relationship between the active and reactive currents with reference to the voltages at the two ends. So if you see that, so from this phasor diagram, I have to derive the relationship between active and reactive currents. So for that one I am taking, here we are using two ends, that is the voltage at the two ends, that is E1 and E2. So by using this E1 and E2, I have to give the active and reactive components of the current flow at E1 and E2 end. So at the same time I have to derive the reactive power and active power for those. So for that one I am taking, here I am giving some points. So this one is, so by using active component of the power flow at E1, that is here. So observe this diagram. So here I am taking firstly active component of the current flow at E1. Active component of the current flow at E1. Okay, active component of the current flow at E1, that is IP1 is equal to E2 sin delta by X. This is the active component of the current flow. So this one, active component of the current flow at E1. Okay, IP1 is equal to E2 sin delta by X. At the same time, we have to derive the reactive component of the current flow at E1. That is this one. IQ1 is equal to E1 minus E2 cos delta by X. This is the reactive component of the current flow at E1. Okay, this is the reactive component of the current flow at E1. This is the active component of the current flow at E1. Active component and reactive component at E1 end. Okay. Next, we have to derive the active power at E1 end. So the active power, that is P1. Okay. That is P1. That is P1 is equal to, the formula is E1 into E2 sin delta by X. E1 into E2 sin delta by X. That is the formula. That is the formula for active power. Okay. P1 is equal to E1 into E2 sin delta by X. That is the formula for active power at the E1 end. From this diagram I derive that one, that is P1 is equal to E1 into E2 sin delta by X. Okay. Next, reactive power at the E1 end. So for the same E1 end, I have to give the reactive power at the E1 end, that is Q1 is equal to, E1 minus E2 cos delta, E1 minus E2 cos delta into E1 by X. So this is the formula for reactive power at the E1 end. Q1 is equal to E1 into E1 minus E2 cos delta by x. This is the reactive power at even end, and active power at the even end is P1 is equal to E1 of E2 sin delta by x. Okay, similarly, active component of the current flow at E2. So already active component of the power flow at E1 end. Similarly, active component of the current flow at E2 end is here IP2 is equal to E1 sin delta by x. IP2 is equal to E1 sin delta by x. That is the active component of the current flow at E2 end. So previously, I taught you about active component and reactive component at E1 end. At the same time, active power and reactive power at E1 end. And similarly, here I am explaining active component of the current flow at E2 end and reactive component of the current flow at E2 end. At the same time, active power at E2 end, reactive power at E2 end. So here the formula for active component of the current flow at E2 end is IP2 is equal to E1 sin delta by x, and reactive component of the current flow IQ2 is equal to E2 minus E1 cos delta by x. This one IQ2 is equal to E2 minus E1 cos delta by x. Okay. Next, the active power at the E2 end is formula is P2 is equal to E2 into E1 sin delta by x. P2 is equal to E2 into E1 sin delta by x. Same active power at the E1 end is P1 is equal to E1 of E2 sin delta by x. But here P2 is equal to E2 of E1 sin delta by x. Okay. And reactive power at the E2 end is Q2 is equal to E2 of E2 minus E1 cos delta by x. Similarly, reactive power at the E1 end is Q1 is equal to E1 into E1 minus E2 cos delta by x. That is the formula for reactive power at E1 end. Similarly, reactive power at the E2 end is Q2 is equal to E2 of E2 minus E1 cos delta by x. Okay, so by using these all conditions, naturally P1 and P2 are the same. For the E1 and for the E2 end to the E2 end, the P1 and P2 are the same. So from that one, P is equal to E1 of E2 sin delta by x. That is the power formula. P is equal to E1 of E2 sin delta by x. Okay. So this is the explanation for this diagram. So this one. Okay. So this phasor diagram gives the relationship between the active and reactive currents with reference to the voltages at the two ends, that is E1 and E2. So for that both ends, I am explained the reactive component, reactive component of the current flow at E1 and E2 end. At the same time, active power and reactive power at E1 end, active and reactive power at E2 end, and power equations from this one. And next, I am explaining about this diagram. So this is the half sine wave diagram. Half sine wave curve of active power increasing to a peak value. Active power increasing to a peak value, that is P maximum. So this is the half sine wave curve. Okay. So in the diagram it is a half sine wave. Okay. So this is the half sine wave diagram of the active power increasing to a peak with an increase of delta to 90 degrees. So actually the angle is delta, but here in this case the delta is increased to 90 degrees. Here the power value is P is equal to E1 E2 by x into sin delta. So already I told this one in the previous concept, that is power flow and dynamic stability considerations for this diagram. P is equal to E1 of E2 sin delta by x. From this one I am writing P is equal to E1 E2 by x into sin delta. So here this is the half sine wave diagram. Half sine wave curve of a active power increasing to a peak value. Okay, peak value with an increase in delta to 90 degrees. Okay, delta to 90 degrees. Here power then falls with further increase in angle. So if the angle is increasing, that means coming to 180 degrees, 90 here delta to 90 degrees, so 0 to 90 degrees it will increasing, but from 90 to 180 degrees it will decreasing. Okay, if you observe this diagram, you will clearly understand. Okay, so from the angle is increasing to delta to 90 degrees, so the value is increasing, the power value is reached to maximum value. So whenever the angle is increasing to 180 degrees, so this value is fallen. Okay, the power value is decreasing, and finally to 0 at delta is equal to 180 degrees. finally it coming to zero value at delta is equal to 180 degrees. So that means it is easy to appreciate that without high speed control of any of the parameters, that is E1, E2 or E1 minus E2 or X and delta, the transmission line can be utilized only to a level well below that corresponding to 90 degrees. Okay. So this is necessary in order to maintain the adequate margin needed for transient dynamic stability. So here increase and decrease of the value of X will increase and decrease the height of the curves. So this one, so increase and decrease of the value of X, okay, increase and decrease of value of X will increase and decrease the height of the curves. Okay, increase and decrease of the value of X will increase and decrease the height of the curves respectively. Okay, so that means for a given power flow varying of X, okay, for a given power flow varying of X will correspondingly vary the angle between the two ends, will correspondingly vary the angle between the two ends. Okay, so next, these three diagrams, so this, so if you see this diagram, these diagrams EFG, okay, so here this figure, okay, so this figure that will change in the magnitude of E1, change in the magnitude. So actually the E1 value is up to this one, but here the value is changed to this value, this one. Here the actual value is this, so this value is changed to this value. That means here with change in the magnitude of E1, the magnitude of the driving voltage phasor E1 minus E2, E1 minus E2 does not change. So if you see this, E1 minus E2 does not change, but E1 is changed. So if you observe this diagram, so here E1, actually E1 value is up to this one, but here the value is increased to this value, but the change in the phasor difference, the driving voltage phasor E1 minus E2 does not change. Okay, E1 minus E2 does not change, but its phase angle does. But the phase angle is does. Okay, so this one. So here power or current flow can also be controlled by regulating the magnitude of voltage phasor. So here power or current flow can be controlled by regulating the magnitude of voltage phasors E1 and E1 or E2. It is shown in the figure E. So by using this diagram, that means E1 and E2, we will control the power and current flow. So this one. Okay. So this also means that regulation of the magnitude of the voltage phase E1 and E2 has much more influence over the reactive power flow than the active power flow. Okay. Next, if you observe this diagram, so here I am injecting the voltage. Here I am injecting the voltage. So when the injected voltage is in phase quadrature with the current. So when the injected voltage is in phase quadrature with the current, so it directly influences the magnitude of the current flow. It directly influences the magnitude of the current flow. So for that case, the small influence substantially it will increase the current flow. Okay, it will increase the current flow. So observe this diagram. This diagram. So E1 is not changed, but E1 minus E2 is changed by injecting the voltage. So after injecting the voltage, the current value is changed. Okay. So and with small angle influences substantially the active power flow. Okay. So for this diagram, and here I am injecting the voltage in this way. So here I am injecting the voltage. Here I am injecting the voltage to the voltage phasor E1 minus E2, but here I am injecting the voltage at the E1 end. E1 phasor, this one. Okay, this is the phase angle. So it is seen that varying the amplitude and phase angle of the voltage injected in series. So here I am varying the injected voltage. So at that time both the active and reactive current flow can be influenced. So in this one, the active and reactive current flow can be influenced. Okay, the active and reactive power can be influenced. So here voltage injection methods form the most important portfolio for the FACTS controllers. Okay, here the injected voltage methods from the most important portfolio of the FACTS controllers. Okay, so this is the concept I am discussed in this one. Okay, so here by varying the amplitudes and phase angles of the voltage injected in series, both the active and the reactive current flow can be controlled. Okay,